When you understand the mind, your life begins to change. Buddhist wisdom. A moment may end in the world around you, yet continue for hours within the mind. Someone says a few words, and the conversation moves on. Your mind keeps returning to the same sentence. It studies the tone, imagines what should have been said, and searches for what the moment might mean about you, about the other person, or about what comes next. The event was brief. Its inner life can last much longer. You may recognize this from your own experience. The body is in one room, while the mind is still inside a meeting from the morning, an argument from last week, or a loss from many years ago. There is no reason to be ashamed of this. Many mental habits began as attempts to protect us. Replaying a conversation can feel like preparation, and expecting the worst can feel safer than being surprised. Their history deserves understanding. Buddhist teaching begins within ordinary human life. Bodies become ill, relationships change, plans fail, and people sometimes act without care. Our history and present conditions shape the way we meet what happens. Understanding the mind does not remove grief, fear, physical pain, or uncertainty. These experiences can still reach us deeply. What changes is the way they are met. We begin to recognize them before they take command of judgment, speech, and action. Anger may arise without becoming cruel speech. Fear may appear without being allowed to write the whole future. Change often begins in moments this small. We notice what happened, what feeling followed, what the mind started to want, and what action it was preparing to take. One clear pause can affect a sentence, a decision, or a relationship. Repeated over time, such moments begin to shape the direction of a life. To understand this change, we first need to see what belongs to the event itself and what is being formed within the mind. A compassionate understanding of the mind must respect the facts. Illness affects the body. Betrayal breaks trust. Abuse creates danger. Poverty limits choices. Grief can change the rhythm of daily life. A person facing these conditions may need protection, treatment, support, justice, or practical help. Saying that everything exists only in the mind can make a suffering person feel even more alone. The event, however, is only one part of the total experience. Once something happens, the mind begins to give it meaning. It connects the present with memories from the past. It predicts what may happen next. It asks whether we are safe, respected, loved, successful, or worthy. This happens so quickly that the event and the interpretation can seem like one thing. Imagine sending a message and receiving no reply. The known facts are limited. A message was sent, and an answer has not arrived. The mind may soon add a much larger story. Perhaps the other person is angry. Perhaps you have become unimportant. Perhaps the relationship is ending. An old fear of being left may enter the present, and the body begins responding to a conclusion that has never been confirmed. When anxiety is already present, the mind selects memories that fit its fear and overlooks other explanations. The pain is real, even when the conclusion remains uncertain. The same silence may feel ordinary on another day. When you are rested and secure, you may assume the other person is busy. When you are exhausted, lonely, or already unsure of the relationship, the silence may feel threatening. The outer event has not changed. The conditions meeting it have changed. This does not excuse harmful behavior. A lie remains a lie. A broken promise has consequences. A violated boundary calls for a clear response. Wisdom includes what happened outside us and what arose inside us. Leaving out either side makes the picture incomplete. Teachings about the mind can sound like an accusation. A person hears, "You created your own suffering," and carries blame on top of pain. Buddhist teaching points toward conditions such as childhood, repetition, exhaustion, illness, chronic stress, or an environment that never felt safe. Self-blame then adds another layer. Fear is followed by the judgment that it should not exist. Grief is followed by the belief that recovery should have happened already. A difficult state becomes harder to understand when it is treated as evidence of personal failure. Clear seeing begins with allowing the experience to be known. This does not mean approving every reaction or following every impulse. It means giving the mind enough honesty to reveal what is actually there. Because reactions arise through conditions, they are neither a fixed identity nor a hopeless destiny. They can be studied. Their supporting conditions can change. A person can learn to recognize a familiar pattern before it completes its usual path. A useful practice is to separate the experience into observations. What are the known facts? What is happening in the body? What feeling is present? What meaning is the mind adding? And what does it want to do next? Suppose a colleague criticizes your work in front of others. Certain words were spoken in a public place. Heat spreads across the face. The chest tightens. The experience feels unpleasant. The mind adds, "They are trying to humiliate me. Everyone thinks I am incompetent." An urge appears to attack, defend, disappear, or replay the scene for the rest of the day. If you can see even part of this sequence, the experience becomes less solid. There are words, bodily sensations, painful feeling, interpretation, and impulse. The criticism may contain useful information, or it may be unfair. A private conversation, a correction, or a firm boundary may be needed. Seeing the process gives us a better chance of choosing a response that fits the situation. And that response becomes a new condition for what happens next. This is where Buddhist psychology becomes practical. It invites us to see suffering being formed in real time. We begin to distinguish the wound from the story surrounding it, the feeling from the command that follows it, and the event from the identity we may build around it. Once this distinction is clear, we can look more closely at the mind itself. We often speak of my mind as though it were a stable object. Direct experience shows a living process. The mind may feel open in the morning and defensive by the afternoon. Confidence can disappear after one conversation. Anger rises, stays for a time, and fades. A memory can change the emotional color of an entire room. After a difficult day, the same situation may appear less absolute following rest, food, movement, or a supportive conversation. The problem remains while the mind meeting it has changed. From a Buddhist perspective, the mind is known through processes. There is contact with sights, sounds, sensations, thoughts, and memories. There is feeling. There is recognition and interpretation. There are intentions, desires, fears, and habits. These elements influence one another and change according to conditions. Understanding begins by recognizing the state that is present. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha says, they understand mind with greed as mind with greed, and mind without greed as mind without greed. The same pattern is applied to hate, delusion, contraction, distraction, collectedness, and freedom. The instruction is simple, yet it reaches deeply into our usual way of living. When anger is present, we often see the other person's fault with great clarity, and see the anger itself with very little clarity. When fear is present, the mind's prediction feels like a fact. When desire is present, the object appears to hold the satisfaction we need. Recognition may begin with very plain language. The mind is under pressure. Something in me wants to escape. I want this person to approve of me. You do not need a perfect label. You only need enough honesty to know what is happening. This changes our relationship with the state. I am a failure becomes a thought of failure is present. I am an angry person becomes anger is active in the mind. The feeling remains real. Responsibility remains important. Yet a passing state no longer has to become the whole account of who we are. This can bring relief without denying pain. Sadness can be cared for without becoming an identity. Fear can be heard without receiving authority over every decision. Recognition also reveals conditions. Anger may depend on tiredness, pride, fear, an old injury, or a need for control. Anxiety may depend on uncertainty, repeated imagination, physical tension, and the habit of preparing for the worst. Jealousy may grow through comparison and the belief that another person's success reduces our own worth. When the conditions become visible, the state becomes understandable. A habit formed over many years may continue even after we see it clearly. Insight gives direction, and repeated practice gradually changes the pattern. Rehearsed resentment becomes easier to enter. Patience, honest reflection, and goodwill can also become familiar paths. This gives us responsibility without shame. We inherited many patterns, and we continue to strengthen some of them. The first spark of anger may still appear, while the hours of feeding it can gradually become shorter. Understanding the mind also means seeing change directly. Fear changes in intensity. Grief moves through different forms. Desire rises and falls. A thought that feels absolute may weaken after rest, a conversation, or a shift in attention. Impermanence becomes more than an idea when we watch a mental state change while it is being known. During a strong emotion, notice the pressure in the body, the images in the mind, and the urge to act. You may find movement where you expected something solid. This observation makes us slower to believe every conclusion produced by a distressed mind. It can also make us more patient with ourselves. A difficult state is not proof that practice has failed. It is an event within a wider stream of causes and conditions. The next step is to see how these conditions connect. A brief moment of contact can develop into craving, clinging, and action with remarkable speed. This sequence shows where training can enter. The process often begins before a full sentence form in the mind. We hear a criticism, notice an expression, remember a mistake, or feel pain in the body. Contact occurs, and the experience immediately carries a tone. It feels pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. In the Chakaka Sutta, the Buddha explains the sequence in compact language. With contact as condition, there is feeling. With feeling as condition, there is craving. This teaching identifies a decisive movement. Once feeling appears, the mind leans toward keeping, escaping, controlling, or becoming something else. When an experience feels pleasant, we want it to continue. We may want more praise, attention, certainty, or pleasure. When it feels unpleasant, we want it gone. We may attack the source, escape the situation, numb ourselves, or demand that reality change immediately. Craving then develops into clinging. We attach the experience to identity and security. I must be respected. This relationship must remain. My view must win. Without this role, I have no value. At this point, the event carries the weight of the self we are trying to defend. Speech and action often follow. We send the message, raise our voice, withdraw affection, buy something we do not need, or avoid a necessary conversation. The action leaves consequences, and those consequences become new conditions for the mind. A brief feeling has entered a cycle. The central training here is mindfulness, or sati. The word carries the sense of remembering and keeping in mind. In the Sekha Sutta, a well-trained disciple is described in this way. they have utmost mindfulness and alertness, and can remember and recall what was said and done long ago. The passage includes memory in the ordinary sense, while the practice of sati also applies this capacity to the present task. Mindfulness remembers what we are doing while we are doing it. During meditation, it keeps the body, feeling, mind, or principle under observation. During conflict, it remembers that anger is present. Words have consequences, and understanding should come before action. During pleasure, it remembers change. During pain, it remembers that a feeling can be known without immediate obedience. This remembering gives continuity to practice. Attention may touch the breath and disappear into thought a second later. Sati remembers to return, and why the return matters. In contemplation of feeling, it keeps feeling in view before preference becomes pursuit or resistance. In contemplation of mind, it remembers to know anger as anger and fear as fear. Pain can then be known as pain, desire as desire, and thought as thought. This meaning protects mindfulness from becoming passive attention. Attention can be captured by anything. A person absorbed in resentment is attending closely to resentment. Mindfulness keeps something wise and relevant present in the mind. It works with clear comprehension, right view, and right effort. Consider an argument. The body becomes tense, the mind produces its case, and the urge to speak grows. Mindfulness remembers. This is anger. The feeling is unpleasant. The mind wants victory. Speech spoken now may cause harm. The remembering may not produce perfect behavior, yet it brings the teaching into the moment when it is needed. At first, mindfulness may arrive late. We recognize anger after the argument. With training, we recognize it during the argument. Later, we may notice the tightening of the body and the urge to defend before harsh speech begins. Progress appears as earlier recognition and wiser response. This training has a moral direction. Mindfulness supports freedom from greed, hatred, and delusion. It remembers what should be cultivated and what should be released. Some states need patience, some need investigation, and some need restraint. A harmful thought may be recognized and then abandoned. A wholesome state may be protected and strengthened. In the Sabba Sutta, the Buddha describes several ways of dealing with harmful influences: clear seeing, restraint, wise use, endurance, avoidance, removal, and development. The range matters. A person may need to observe fear, leave a dangerous place, seek treatment, change an environment, or develop steadiness over time. Wisdom responds to conditions. Mindfulness makes that response possible because it remembers both the situation and the purpose of the path. Without this remembering, feeling becomes craving, craving becomes clinging, and action follows before we understand what happened. With mindfulness, the sequence can be known while it unfolds. This is where understanding becomes practical. A disturbance may arise, yet it can be seen before it passes unnoticed into craving, clinging, and action. The mind remembers that another response is available. This becomes more difficult when life brings pain that cannot be resolved through a pause alone. Some forms of suffering cannot be explained away. A person dies. A diagnosis changes the future. Trust breaks after years of closeness. Violence enters a family. Work disappears, or the body loses abilities it once had. In such moments, talk about inner peace can become insensitive when it asks people to rise above their humanity. Buddhist practice develops within this vulnerability. A trained person may cry at a funeral. Fear may appear while waiting for medical results. Sorrow may continue long after a relationship ends. Love and grief often occupy the same place, because grief reflects the value of what has been lost. The training concerns the way pain begins to organize the rest of life. Grief can grow into the belief that nothing meaningful remains. Fear can turn every unknown future into a disaster. Betrayal can harden into suspicion toward every future relationship. Illness can become the whole identity of the person who is ill. Awareness can protect the life that remains. A grieving person eats because the body needs care. Someone overwhelmed sends one message asking for help. A person who has been hurt leaves one trustworthy relationship open. Such actions may look small and carry great meaning. Equanimity, or upekkha, describes a mind that can remain balanced within changing conditions. It still cares. It can act, protect, grieve, and speak firmly. Practical wisdom includes action in the world. Meditation cannot replace emergency protection. Acceptance cannot replace medical care. Compassion does not require continued access for someone who causes harm. A clear mind may decide to speak, leave, report, seek help, or rest. The response depends on the conditions. In the Duryodhana Sutta, the Buddha names what every human life encounters: gain and loss, disrepute and fame, blame and praise, and pleasure and pain. A trained disciple still meets all eight. Training changes how completely the mind is lifted, crushed, attracted, and repelled by them. Praise can be received without making it the foundation of worth. Criticism can be examined without becoming a verdict on the whole person. Success can be appreciated while its instability is understood. Loss can be mourned without turning it into proof that life has no value. The mind often searches for permanent security in unstable conditions. We want a relationship that can never change, a body that never declines, approval that never disappears, and control over outcomes shaped by many causes. Fear grows because these conditions cannot give such a promise. Understanding the mind loosens this demand. We can love while knowing that relationships change, care for the body while knowing that it ages, and work sincerely while knowing that effort does not govern every result. This can deepen care because people and opportunities are present for a limited time. There will be days when you understand this and still feel overwhelmed. Awareness may return after the words were spoken or after a night lost in worry. The moment of remembering still matters. It shows that the mind is beginning to know itself. Progress can be modest and meaningful. We notice a reaction sooner, delay a harmful reply, ask for help, or allow grief without adding self-hatred. Each moment changes the conditions of the next one. As understanding deepens, its effects become visible in ordinary life. Our speech becomes more considered. Our choices are less driven by panic or the need to defend an image. We recover from mistakes with greater honesty, and we become more able to care without losing ourselves. A stable mind can still move under pressure. Its stability comes from remaining connected to awareness, ethical concern, and discernment while it moves. Life may shake us, and the experience can still be felt deeply. It no longer has to decide every word, every belief, or every action.